a city rich in history, shadowed by the negativity and the rubble of the community. This is the story of a state that was upbrought by one town.
I'm Giacomo DiStefano, the director of the Patterson Museum. I was born and raised in Paterson. I grew up in the People's Park section. Actually, I grew up on Chestnut Street. Interesting, I moved 3 times in Paterson, or within Paterson, never left Chestnut Street. I went from 79, 70 to 72. From there on, I'd move out and now I live in Sussex County. But I spend all my waking hours and then some right here in Paterson. I spend most of my time, of course, researching history and giving out information, collecting artifacts. We're sort of the city's memory. That's how I like to think of the museum. And the museum itself is history within history because we're housed in the former assembly shop of the Rogers Locomotive Works. The irony of all of this with the museum, especially a city museum, we're actually governed by the Board of Library Trustees, that the city of Paterson and Jacob Rogers, who actually built this building, never saw eye to eye. And actually, when he died in 1901, he left all his money to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, becoming their first major benefactor. And it was his magnificent gift that they still purchase artifacts today, 100 years and still going strong. The Patterson Museum itself really focuses on Paterson as an industrial city. Paterson celebrates itself as the first planned industrial city, founded July 4th, 1792, by the Society for Establishing Useful Manufactures. Really, what they were going to be was a company town, a factory town. But an amazing story would develop, and with the nice thing I really think about it is, many things start off as something and they become something else. You always have high intentions. We're going to create a society to do this, and it morphs into something else. Well, Paterson was founded to be an industrial city, and although it failed with its initial offering, since it was really trying to create this national manufacturing, but it really did become an industrial city. But the industries were inconceivable of the day. We're known as the Silk City, but silk production, locomotives, airplane engine production, none of that could have been envisioned by the founding fathers. The Patterson Free Public Library is actually the first free public library in the state of New Jersey. Library law was established by Passaic County Assemblyman William Prohl, and he said his inspiration for it was his wife Lillian. That law it went before Congress. It went before the New Jersey legislature in April 1st, 1884. And the very first library to adopt the idea, but what the library law provided for is through municipality, through taxation. If the town citizens voted for it, they could open up a free public library. And the very first one was the Patterson Free Public Library. Now, one thing I always thought was wild about the library, and how it's really in the beginning of the establishment of libraries, and libraries, more importantly, the School of Library Science, which we still have today. To be a librarian, you have to have your Master in Library Science. But most smaller libraries don't use the Library of Congress numbering system or lettering system, but what they'll use is the Dewey Decimal. Well, when the Patterson Free Public Libraries Board was established and they wanted to find their first librarian, which would be the director, who did they turn to but Melville Dewey himself, the inventor of library science, and he was the dean at Columbia University, where he established the first official school for library sciences. One of the last major pushes for Patterson engines was for construction on the Panama Canal, which was one of the wonders of the world. The Isthmus Canal Commission, or ICC, had ordered 100 set of moguls built by the American Locomotive Company at the Cook Works. We have one example of these right outside on the property. That's engine 299. And here's a shot of 299 in service when it was at the canal zone. One of the last major identifiable industries for a Patterson product would have been the Wright's Aeronautical Corporation. They were based in Patterson from 1920 to 1945, and they were really here for the golden age of aviation, the 20s and 30s, when every other day somebody was breaking an air endurance record, an altitude record, a speed record. It was normally done with the Wright's engines. Wright's Aeronautical Corporation was a direct descendant of the Dayton Wright Company, the Wright brothers, and they made really two types of engines, all air-cooled, but one was the Whirlwind, which are the smaller ones, and the larger ones would be called Cyclones. Their most famous engine was the J5, which powered the Spirit of St. Louis from New York to Paris nonstop in Colonel Lindbergh's solo historic transatlantic flight. That flight was so significant that orders poured in from all over the world, and it made Wright's the premier airplane engine builder in the world. The most important artifact the museum maintains would be the two submersibles developed by John Philip Holland, Patterson school teacher and Irish immigrant. He settled in Paterson around 1877, and he took up a teaching position at St. John's Parochial School, where he taught math and music. In his spare time, he was developing underwater sea travel, or what we would know today as submarines. Now, John Holland was building these things under the guise that he would make war obsolete. Because really, to control the world at the time, you'd have to have a strong navy. And he felt smaller countries, he definitely, since he grew up in Ireland, understood a small country like Ireland could never defend itself against Great Britain. But if you had a steamship or a passenger ship and you had some secret compartments below waterline, you could have one of these submersibles and they would be able to disarm or, disable a battleship from a warring country. So you could actually build these things, and therefore it would make a mutual deterrent, and things would be obsolete in terms of killing each other. He really was a member of the Christian Brotherhood. His idea really for this, he grew up on the west coast of Ireland in County Clare, and he lived by the sea. He really got interested in sea warfare while he was reading the Cork Examiner back in 1862, and he was following the battle at Hampton Roads, or what we know as the clash between the two ironclads, the Monitor and the Merrimack. Now, he thought this was a really great idea, having them wrapped in iron, and most of it is below waterline, but he thought, why isn't the entire vessel submerging? So he started coming up with his plans. He started submitting plans, I believe, as early as 1875, 1876, but the Navy really wasn't interested. So he created his own little John Holland Torpedo Company, and he built boat number 1 to test his principles. Benny Ran is the largest vessel that he built during his Patterson period. It's 31 feet in length. It's more than twice the size of boat number 1. It weighs 19.5 tons, or 39,000 pounds. But the most important difference is this is capable of firing one 6-foot Whitehead dynamite torpedo. So this was really meant to disable a battleship or some enemy ship from another country. Holland envisioned that this vessel would not be traveling on its own, but that it would be just like in secret compartments on a steamship. And then if you saw a battleship coming, you'd open up your floodgates and send it out, and hopefully it would, disable the ship, but not kill anyone. And he really figured this idea would just render the navies of the world obsolete and would be one thing to end wars. At least that was his hope. Holland himself would build 4 more submarines, and it's his 6th submarine that the United States Navy finally buys on April 11th, 1900. And it becomes the first one, the SS-1, or was later dubbed the USS Holland. It was commissioned October 12th, 1900, and it was quite successful, except it didn't survive the scrap drives of the mid-1940s, so unfortunately we've lost one of the most important pieces, I think, of naval history. But what we really do have is the first modern submarine in the world, and that's what boat number 1 comes into play.
Like Jack, there are people who have been involved through the changes and difficulties of the city since their youth or their arrival at the city.
Well, I've always been interested in Patterson history. My family, my father's side, came from Patterson, from the late 1800s, and I've always been intrigued with the city's history, from a variety of things. Its earliest history and later history, and Even things dealing with fire protection too have always been of interest to me. So Patterson's changed quite a bit over the years, of course. Having sort of studied this and looked at it, it's an evolutionary process. So there's folks coming from all different parts of the world, bringing their expertise and their skills and their needs and all sorts of things, and landing here in Paterson and setting up businesses and what have you. So it's changed quite a bit. I mean, today, of course, Paterson is no longer, a great manufacturing center in that sense that it was perhaps 100 years ago. But the role of Paterson, in the area basically is still very important. It's a center, of course, particularly for the medical industry. We've got one of the biggest hospitals here in the state, and so it's again, its role changes as time goes on. 50 years from now, Paterson probably won't look that much different in my mind. My hope is that, particularly in the last several years, our history here in the city has got some renewed vigor. People are interested in the Patterson's long history, and I'm hoping that, going forward 50 years from now, we'll have a really good, well-functioning national park here in the city, and we'll bring in a lot of people from all over the world, perhaps, to come and see what happened here in the last 250 years. So that's my hope. That's what I'm hoping for. Well, I guess Patterson to me means a lot of things. Of course, to a lot of to other folks as well. It's certainly a sort of a family issue for me. Of course, having lived in the area basically, and of course my family on my father's side, coming from Patterson, holding a variety of roles here, and other relatives and stuff that lived here. And so I guess it holds a special place in my heart, and I think a lot of people's hearts that have either lived, worked, or been involved with the city's history over its many years. So it's a special place for all of us.
Although hope is lost, there's still a spark of inspiration flowing around.
So basically, I started Your Dream Matters project, and it's based on inspirational murals that contain dreams and motivational quotes. So the whole purpose behind it is just, to motivate people to to actually do something, because in Patterson, it's so negative, and people believe that they're where they come from doesn't allow them to be more than who they really are. So I just want people to to feel they matter, their dream matters, that they could be who they are. It doesn't matter what Patterson is. My friend and I were just thinking what we should do, and then we just come with a quote, and then I don't know, we just painted the dream with blocks.
Fighters. That is what you call the people who still believe in the city. Blue-collared and nothing less.